Hey, I'm Vin, and this is Give It Space. For the next few minutes, we're going to sit with one feeling, idea, social norm, identity, or just whatever might be weighing on us in this moment. Together, we'll explore where it comes from, why it lingers, and give it room to breathe without trying to fix anything. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's give it some space. Hello and welcome to this special bonus episode of Give It Space. And happy Valentine's Day. Now, since it's Valentine's Day, I figured I'd post an episode in celebration. However, I want to preface by saying I might be a little biased and I might be a little butthurt and potentially a little bit skeptical when it comes to Valentine's Day, considering I have only platonic love in my life right now, which is honestly how I prefer it. Sort of. Yeah, it's kind of how I prefer it. So maybe this episode is actually for those of us who are feeling a bit alone this Valentine's Day and need a reason to internally hate on the holiday and everybody celebrating it. So I don't like Valentine's Day. I have never celebrated Valentine's Day other than getting like gifts from my parents and chocolates from my parents. And, when I was a little kid and you were forced to participate in Valentine's Day things, that's the only time I've ever celebrated Valentine's Day. But this is not going to be our standard Give It Space episode because it is a holiday episode and it's my first holiday episode. Yay me. So things are going to be a little different. It's not actually giving anything space. We're not going to be sitting with Valentine's Day. We're not going to be sitting with the story of Valentine's Day. I am literally just going to be talking, and maybe you learn something, maybe you don't, about Valentine's Day, but yeah, so let's get into it. Obviously, like I said, this episode is about Valentine's Day, but not the Valentine's Day that we've come to expect. Not the Hallmark cards, not the chocolate, not the roses. No. None of that. The one that we're going to be talking about is much, much darker than even the darkest chocolate. I'm sorry, that was lame. I had to put that in there. I just dark chocolate, like a Valentine's chocolate. Anyways, sorry. All right, so what is Valentine's Day? Well, the story we've been told since childhood is that of Saint Valentine. But which one? There are actually two notable Saint Valentines from the 3rd century AD, or after death, which is where most of these stories originate. The first Saint Valentine was a priest in Rome who defied Emperor Claudius II Gothicus, I think that's how you say it, who outlawed marriage for young men because he thought it distracted them from their duties and from specifically their manhood and their duties in war and whatever. So by marrying couples in secret, this Saint Valentine was discovered and executed by Claudius II, or the emperor. The second is the legitimate Saint Valentine of Italy, also beheaded during Claudius II's reign for either renouncing his faith and converting others or attempting to help Christian prisoners escape from Roman prisons. The real reason that he was beheaded is unknown, between either helping prisoners escape or by renouncing his faith and trying to convert others. But the story of Valentine's Day is said to have come from this guy because he supposedly fell in love with his jailer's daughter, and then before his death or before his execution, he wrote her the infamous letter that said, "From your Valentine." So that's where Valentine's Day comes from, apparently. Regardless of who it originated from, Valentine was remembered as heroic, sympathetic, and romantic into the Middle Ages and beyond. It was around this time that Shakespeare and Chaucer began writing about St. Valentine's Day as a romantic celebration in 1380, which is then what tied February 14th to St. Valentine's Day because of birds' mating season and also the coming of spring and also love, I guess. So it wasn't actually until Shakespeare and Chaucer were writing poems that were romanticizing St. Valentine's and February that things kind of started being thrown together and became St. Valentine's Day. But even now, it is still widely celebrated around the United States and Europe, most of Europe, as a day to buy your loved ones some roses, buy them some chocolate, Netflix and chill, propose to somebody, or if you're like me, make mailboxes in school and pass out Fun Dip to everybody because everybody's your Valentine in grade school. And if you're like me now, then you work all day, maybe buy yourself some chocolate, have a drink, or more likely an edible, and then pass the fuck out as soon as I get home. That is my Valentine's Day. Because I'm recording this before Valentine's Day. But I still tried to get in the spirit, red and pink and pink. So I tried, guys, I tried. But there is still a large part of that story that's missing. And here's where it takes a turn. Now, I'm not sure if any of this needs a trigger warning. I've never done an episode like this before. But there is some more raunchy, explicit stuff with undertones of assault. But I'll try to keep it vague as best I can, and history is pretty vague as it is when it comes to this. So I don't think there's a trigger warning needed, but here it is. If you get uncomfortable, skip a couple seconds and it'll be fine, I promise. So, with that being said, other than the saints, there's a third origin tied to Valentine's Day. And it's a pagan festival called Lupercalia, which takes place in February. Now, Lupercalia has been washed down to a fertility festival dedicated to Phanes, the Roman god of agriculture, as well as to the Roman founders Romulus and Remus. I can already see the Marauders fanfic lovers smirking right now. Guys, it's not the same people, I swear. It's not the same people. Although wolves is kind of significant. Anyways. And it was said that the Christian church deliberately placed Valentine's Day on the 14th of February to try and Christianize the pagan celebration on the 15th. So Lupercalia took place on February 15th and always had. But we'll get to that later. So by the end of the 5th century, Lupercalia was deemed unchristian and outlawed. But that's not where the story ends, unfortunately. Lupercalia was more than a fertility festival. And as an outsider looking in, it's kind of giving Lord of the Flies, kind of giving Midsummer. I will get into that right now. And all of this information can be found online, and I found all of it specifically on history.com, but there are some other sources too. But you could find a Reddit story, you could find it on Wikipedia, you could find it on all of these unreliable sources, but I figured I'd go straight to history.com. And I did look at some scholars' thesis or thesi or whatever you want to call it and research. So I dug deep on this one, guys. I dug real deep. I wanted to make sure you had all of the information and all of the nitty-gritty details. So before we go any further, I'm going to explain this as concisely as I can because, like I said, it's a lot of information. Starting with the name, that's where we're going to start. Lupercalia derives from two separate things. The first being the Roman fertility god Lupercus, and the second is Lupercal Cave, where according to Roman mythology, is where the she-wolf Lupa was said to have nursed Romulus and Remus as infants, who were twins. Remember those two, the Roman founders, they are very important for later. It's also important to note how much the Romans are influenced by and adore wolves, and just wolves in general, and wolf culture, and wolf identities. But I want to take us back a bit to explain that since I think it'll be helpful for later. There are two hypothesized stories to explain the origins of this fertility festival. So I've already gone over what the name means, but now I'm going to be talking about what is supposedly the origins of Lupercalia Festival. The first comes from Clifford Ando, a Roman historian who believes Lupercalia derives from Arcadia's Lycaea Festival, held on Wolf Mountain in Greece, again, wolves, and to honor Zeus, every 9 years a human was sacrificed. All of the young boys approaching manhood would eat a piece of meat out of a pot. The one who ate the single piece of human flesh in the pot would be transformed into a werewolf and sent away. Now, if the werewolf abstained from eating human flesh for another 9 years, he would turn back into a human and rejoin civilization. And then the whole process would start over again every 9 years. So that's the first origin story that is linked to Lupercalia. The second comes from a professor of Greek and Latin studies named Vukovic, who theorizes that Lupercalia started off as an Indo-European rite of passage before the foundation of Rome. He thinks that they had cultural rituals where young men would identify with wolves as predators and hunters, again, as another rite of passage into manhood and adulthood. Lots of wolves. Again, kind of sus if you ask me, but not my place. A lot of the undertones are boys turning into men, wolves, primal instincts. So I'm not foreshadowing. What do you mean? I'm not foreshadowing. I didn't say anything. Yeah, lots of wolves, very sus. But first I need to tell you guys about something else. And this something else is called Aspire energy drinks. Sorry for the off topic, but I have to tell you about this. Now, I have never been a huge fan of energy drinks. I had this phase in college where I would drink like one every 5 days to get me through lectures. But I stopped because they would make me super jittery and all of the sugar would have me crashing after like 20 minutes and then I would just pass out. But I tried something else and I have never had those same problems with Aspire Energy. And that's because they have 0 calories, 0 sugar, and 0 additives. And they use natural green tea as the primary source of caffeine. So you get 80 milligrams of caffeine, equivalent to that of a standard coffee cup. You get flavors like strawberry watermelon and raspberry acai with added vitamins, biotin, and ginger for full body support. Plus, it's carbonated, which in my opinion is the best thing that you could ever do to a drink. It makes it 10 times better. It makes it lighter. They give you energy. They don't make your stomach hurt. In my opinion, they actually make your stomach hurt less. So if you're a tummy aching queen, maybe you need some of this. So if you want to try this healthy energy drink for yourself, don't worry because I've got you covered. Just head on over to aspiredrinks.com. That's ASPIRE drinks.com. Pick out your flavors and enter my code at checkout. I got you guys 20% off and free shipping in the United States when you use code SPACE11. That's SPACE11. And if just buying healthy energy drinks weren't enough, I get a commission each time you use my code, which means you are directly supporting this podcast and helping me make my episodes and my dreams a reality. So thank you so much, you guys. On the 15th of February in ancient Rome, Luperci priests would enter the Lupercal cave near Palatine Hill in the middle of Rome. Each Lupercalia started with the sacrifice of a goat to symbolize fertility, and a dog, which was considered the domestic counterpart to a wolf. Lots of wolves, you guys, lots of wolves. So at some point, things get a little muddled in every story that I was reading. Where the sacrifice takes place is unknown, but for now I feel like it's safe to assume that it happens in the cave. Also, it's ancient Rome and a festival. Some accounts say that the priests disrobed in the caves, while some say they emerged with loincloths, so it's really not known whether or not they were fully nude the entire time, or if maybe they kept clothes on for a little bit. I like to think of them as going commando for effect, because, it's ancient Rome. I think it paints a cool picture in my mind, so that's where we're going with. But anyways, after that happened, then 2 Luperci priests would be chosen to lead the entire group, and they would approach the altar. Their foreheads would be touched by the bloodied knife used to sacrifice the animals, then wiped clean with wool dipped in milk to symbolize the she-wolf nursing the brothers in the same cave. So they're in the same cave. Everything ties back to itself. So the 2 men would have their foreheads drenched in the blood from the knife and then cleaned off with wool dipped in milk. And then it was required that those 2 young men laugh loudly to signify the start of the actual ritual. I don't know why. Multiple stories said that the men were required to laugh like boisterously or chaotically or something to get everybody to join in. It was really weird. But then the men would cut strips from the skin of their sacrificed animals they call them thongs. I don't really know what else. It was kind of confusing. I think they're just like long strips of animal skin, basically. And once properly inebriated, they would be led out of the cave and into the streets by the original pair. Now, this is where Romulus and Remus come in again. It was said that these twin boys were the first pair to run through the streets, starting Lupercalia festivals all together, which kind of foreshadows how these events play out, considering Romulus killed his brother over a land disagreement. And that land disagreement Oh my god, it's crazy how much all of this goes together. So, Romulus killed his brother over a land disagreement, becoming the first king of his city, which he built on Palatine Hill, where they're doing the current Lupercalia celebrations, and then named the entire city Rome after himself. Isn't that just wild? Like, what an origin story. You and your twin brother are nursed to life by a she-wolf in Palatine Cave, or on Palatine Hill, and then you grow up with your brother. You two are like dynamic duo, and then you argue over where your city should be built. And so you kill your brother over the argument and then build the city on the same place where you were nursed together and then name it after yourself. Crazy. But if you think that's where it gets fucked, no. This is where the story really gets fucked. So, originally, the priests would run around town striking any woman they saw with the leather straps from the sacrificed animals. It wasn't until generations later that story was changed to say that women would line up among the streets with their palms out, receiving gentle whips from the straps, which would magically make them fertile. So it was believed by the woman that being hit with these sacrificial thongs, or whatever you want to call them, by the priests would make them fertile and help them have easier births and not die from childbirth. Newly married women would begin throwing themselves in the men's paths, hoping to be blessed with fertility. Then the stories changed to imply that women were voluntarily offering their backsides to be whipped instead of their palms. And then from there, it just gets worse. By the second half of the 3rd century after death, women were being hoisted up and beaten with the leather. The celebration shifted from fertility, harvest, spring, and purification to the summoning of primitive urges and the channeling of wolves. Like I said, or didn't say, but implied. I forgot to mention, in the early days of the festival, it wasn't only women who were being whipped. Typically and traditionally, before the women got hit with the sacrificed animal strips and leather, fields were actually also beaten. Like the men would run past, they had a path around the town, and part of that path was a bunch of fields, like where they would grow their crops. So a lot of times the priest would actually take the sacrificed animal skins and hit their fields as they ran past, like trying to bless their fields and bless their crops. So that way they would have success in spring, which also it takes place in February. So it's like they're trying to bless their fields for the upcoming harvest. And then it turned into whipping women as well to bless them with fertility and easy childbearing. Again, in the beginning, the sacrificed animals from before, so the goat and the dogs, would be cooked and shared for everyone in kind of like a barbecue grilling type event, turning the streets into a celebration with dancing and drinking and fun. Some sources say that there was a lottery of sorts that took place, but it has mostly been debunked. I'll tell you anyway, since it's the only real link from Roman Lupercalia festivals to modern day Valentine celebrations that I can find. But basically, young men and women of the towns would have their names drawn in a lottery, pairing them together for the duration of the celebration, and sometimes even longer. It fed into the notions of social bonding and reproduction rather than romance and attraction. Like I said, it wasn't until Chaucer and Shakespeare that anything in February turned romantic. Right now, it's all based on fertility, reproduction, and, they're growing communities. But that's not to say it was like a big orgy or whatever. For the most part, these celebrations remained formal and religious by nature, since it was priests doing all of this. So that's Lupercalia. Ta-da! Honestly, if you told me that I could go back in time and partake in any celebration that I wanted to, and specifically mention Lupercalia festival in its prime, when women would be volunteering to get lightly slapped on the palms before everything else, I'd probably do it, honestly. From the sidelines, obviously. Like, there would be no nudity, no running around hitting women, no lottery where you're picking partners for the rest of the night and maybe for the rest of your life. None of that. I would simply like to be a fly on the wall. I think that would be pretty interesting. Could you imagine just watching a group of grown men and priests run naked through your streets, hitting plants and sometimes women with sacrificed goat skin. I can't. Happy Valentine's. Something about that image is just killing me right now. Okay. Anyways, so on the topic of modern day Valentines, obviously we don't still celebrate Lupercalia, and here's why. Lupercalia ended in the late 5th century Common Era when Pope Gelasius I formally outlawed the pagan festival, claiming it was no longer performed properly and was a threat to Christian civic life. Roman senators, however, argued that the festival was crucial for Rome's safety, leading to a clash with the church, who viewed the rituals as vile and barbaric. While there is no evidence that Pope Gelasius I purposely deemed February 14th as, and this is a long name, the Feast of the Purification of the Virgin Mary, also known as Candlemas, to overshadow and eventually consume Lupercalia altogether, it is easy to see how the church might steal concepts and practices from the pagan religion and the pagan celebration, claim they're primitive, and then ban their religion only to replace it with commercial celebrations that are easy to market and promote Christian values. But despite the ban, records suggest that the festival continued in some form, particularly in Constantinople, for several more centuries following the outlawing. The sacrifices were omitted for the sharing of wine, men wore loincloths during the run, and generally the celebration was toned down. But how did we get to today's February 14th celebrations? Well, let's do a little compare and contrast, because I think this might help us. Lupercalia, February 15th. Valentine's Day, February 14th. The primary focus of Lupercalia was fertility, purification, and protection, whereas now, Valentine's Day, the focus is romantic love, affection, and relationships. Kind of a big jump there. The religious context for Lupercalia is pagan or Roman polytheistic, and then obviously most of the Valentine's Day celebrations today are secular or like a Christian hybrid. Key rituals of Lupercalia are animal sacrifices, whipping with hides, and then the name lottery, whereas today it's not really rituals, but it's a lot of giving flowers, giving cards, and then dining out in nice restaurants. The symbolism, can you guess? Wolves. Wow. Lupercalia. Wolves, goats, blood, and February, or February, which was it's hard to explain. So they celebrated in the early days of Lupercalia. The Romans actually celebrated the god of February, which was February, but that didn't actually end up going anywhere. So you could say that they were just honoring the month of February instead of a god. And then today, our symbolism are hearts, Cupid, roses, lace is often attributed to Valentine's Day. And then the social function, so for the Romans during Lupercalia, it was community cohesion and agricultural renewal. Whereas today, social function is personal expression and then commercial celebration. So there's not really a lot of similarities, as you can see. Lupercalia is definitely not the official origin of Valentine's Day. That's not what I'm trying to imply with this episode. But considering there are so many saints named Valentine to keep track of, I like to believe we were more influenced by Lupercalia than a dumb letter saying, "From your Valentine," that we don't even know if that's true or not. And all of this was wild to research, like absolutely insane. I mean, I'm fascinated by it. I would love to do more episodes. Maybe that'll be my thing, like each holiday, finding the dark, twisted history of where the holiday originated before it was Christianized and modernized and made into a consumer's festival. Yeah, I would be interested to know more about why the Romans were so obsessed with wolves. And I would even love to go back to one of the origin stories. I think it was that first one from Clifford Ando. Maybe I'll do another episode about the Lachaia festival, the one that was on Wolf Mountain in Greece. with the cannibalism turned into werewolvery. I think that'd be interesting. Or maybe I do an episode about Romulus and Remus. So yeah, if you guys would be interested in stuff like that. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a happy Valentine's Day, even if you are like me and you're doing nothing special. You can at least listen to this episode and know you're not alone, and know that people who are celebrating with hearts and cupids are really just celebrating mass-produced, manufactured, faked things because we can't celebrate the sacrifice of goats and dogs and the running of naked men and the whipping of women with said hides of sacrificed dogs. So yeah, thanks for listening. I'm grateful that you're here, obviously. This is Give It Space, your virtual room to slow down, breathe, and just be for a moment. If you want to support this podcast and me, you can get updates and sneak peeks into upcoming episodes on Instagram, or subscribe to my YouTube channel for videos and shorts at Give It Space Pod. I'm always happy to hear your feedback or thoughts for future topics, so DM me on Insta or shoot me an email at giveitspacepod@gmail.com. I'm your host, Vin, and I'll see you next time. Yeah. It's giving Twilight, but not in a good way. I feel like these kinds of werewolves would be the equivalent of like Nosferatu vampires. Like, you know how in Twilight there's like there's the Cullen vampires, and then there's like the Jacob werewolves. I feel like if they were to make a movie about Lupercalia, and then they said that like some of the priests turns into werewolves or whatever, like the equivalent of a Lupercalia Roman werewolf of this time would have to be the vampire Nosferatu. Like, that's what I'm seeing. Like, it's not like the hot, attractive Roman werewolves. It's like, they probably haven't showered in a while. Who knows if that blood is actually going to come out anytime soon. Yeah. Intro so long. Wow. I got all dressed up. Did you notice my nose ring? I put the pink balls on the end. I'm gonna have to cut that out. That's not appropriate. Sorry, YouTube. Sorry, Spotify. I swear I didn't mean anything by that. It's just my nose ring has little Valentine's themed orbs. There's pink orbs at the end of my nose ring, guys. Hey, welcome to this. That sounded so gay of me. Wait. Okay, breathing first. Okay, but regardless, began writing about sound. Oh, my stupid little headphone things are getting stuck on my shirt and it's pissing me off. So sorry, y'all. I'm having a day. I'm having a moment. My whole life is a moment. What the fuck am I talking about? Dedicated to Phanes, the Roman god of adequate. Breathing again. I'm having a hard time doing that today for some reason. Okay. Probably because I keep going in a high-pitched voice for no goddamn reason. Okay, anyway, sorry. Newly women. Okay. By the second half of the sir, hello? While there is no evidence that Pope Gelasius I purposely christened Pope Gelasius I purposely Christian. Why do I keep saying Christian? Purposely christened. I can't say that word. Purposely marked February 14th as the Feast of the Purification of the Virgin Mary, or Candlemas. to overshadow and eventually consume Lupercalia altogether, it's easy to see how the church might steal concept. Okay, I'm starting over. Not over. No, I'm not. No, okay, anyways, I'm sorry. So D may get into it, yeah. I said get into it, yeah. Sorry, off topic. Wait, I'm not even. I haven't. That's fine. Okay. I should go to bed. Your mom. Why did I say that? Anyways, yeah. Okay. Bye. Bye.